It's my pleasure today to welcome the Commissioner of Major League Baseball, Rob Manfred, to Questions for Cancer Research. How are you, Commissioner?
I'm great.
Great to see you. I know that Major League Baseball has done so much in the fight against cancer and its partnership with Stand Up to the Cancer Initiative, which funds cancer research. MLB and its team have generated over $50 million in donations, and the organization has seen some real success in terms of bringing new cancer treatments to market. I know how important this is to you and the team owners, and it's obviously very much needed.
Yeah, Stand Up has been a great relationship for us. Commissioner Seelig started the relationship. We've worked hard to maintain and grow it. I think the Stand Up moments that we do during the World Series and the All-Star game may be one of the most durable activations ever. It's hard to do the same thing year after year after year and get the same effect from the crowd. But I think it's such a personal undertaking, so many people affected by the disease that our fans really continue to be moved by the undertaking.
Yeah, it's such a big thing, and it's great that we have so many people pitching in on this, and certainly a lot of progress made, but a lot of work to go. Let me get you rolling with the recent historic free agency signing with Juan Soto, who on Sunday night agreed to a $765 million 15-year contract, which potentially could be as high as $805 million, the largest player contract in the history of sports. It's an amazing scenario, as it seems that ultimately it came down to the Mets outbidding their crosstown rival Yankees. Congratulations to you and all of MLB and all Mets fans out there on this record contract. What's your reaction, Commissioner, to this incredible deal?
Well, it's always about the player. Juan, unbelievable performer, hit the market at the right age. He obviously came to the big leagues young, and as a result, reached free agency really in his prime. And I think, obviously both the Mets and the Yankees had great years last year, and I think they felt like in the Yankees' case, Juan was an important piece of their success, and they wanted to keep him. And, the Mets felt like he was the kind of player that could take them to the next level.
Yeah, just an amazing deal. Congratulations to you all.
Thanks.
Can you provide an update on the automated ball strike system, which may ultimately replace pitch calls made by home plate umpires? It sounds as though there may be some delays in that it will ultimately make its debut under a challenge system versus calling every pitch. How do things look currently?
Well, I think we continue to make progress on the automated ball strike system. The technology is really outstanding. I mean, this technology is actually accurate to 1/100th of an inch. So we got that piece of it down. We're now dealing with the more, I don't want to say mundane, but less technology-based pieces of the puzzle. How do you set the strike zone? Batter to batter. What strike zone? The system will call any geometry of a strike zone. I'll call it rectangle, a circle, an oval, whatever. What strike zone should we tell it to call? And that's challenging because the rule book definition of the strike zone is not what umpires actually call today. The rule book is a rectangle. They actually call an oval. So we're working through those non-technology pieces. We continue to make good progress through our testing in the minor leagues. We're actually going to have a major league test during spring training. Every team will play somewhere between 12 and 27 games where the challenge system is available to major league players during spring training. We think that's another important step along the way of getting ready to bring the system to the big leagues. I think you should think about kind of our effort in bringing the clock to the major leagues as an example. We did several years worth of work in the minor leagues. We understood very well, we made refinements, we understood very well the consequences of moving to the clock. And I think we want to be in the same position with ABS before we bring it to the big leagues.
Okay, so we're probably, as far as that being in the big leagues, we're probably looking at least maybe out to 26, 27.
No, I don't. No, I don't really agree with that. It could be as early as 25.
Wow, that's fantastic. Let
No,
me ask you a question.
20. I'm sorry, I'm off a year. You're right. 26 would be the earliest. It won't be next year. I haven't turned my mental calendar yet. I'm sorry.
We all know how quickly the time goes by. My gosh. Let me ask you that you may not know the answer to this, but it's actually pretty interesting. When we watch games on television now, we naturally agree or disagree with the calls made by the home plate umps based on where the pitch lands relative to the strike zone box on our TV screens. Since home viewers are placing so much importance on these strike zone boxes, do you have any idea as to how accurate those strike zone boxes are?
They are not particularly accurate. We view it as a broadcast enhancement. Honestly, broadcasters like it, fans seems to like it. If it was up to us, we'd probably get rid of it. It causes a lot of problems. And it's not the same kind of technology that ABS embodies.
I get you. I get you. Interesting. Yeah. And just, I did see that, it's funny to someone like me who says, hey, you've got the technology, you're going to be, pretty comfortable that it's reliable, but you don't see, at least in the near term, upon implementation of this, of being calling every pitch. It would be more on a challenge system, which I guess you've done some polling and people have indicated that that's what they would prefer to see.
Yeah, the polling certainly supports that idea. More important, I think the players who have played under it in the minor leagues feel that the challenge system is the more appropriate, and I want to say this the right way, starting point. I'm not sure that's where we end up long term, but I think it's a better place for us to start. And it is kind of consistent with our approach to instant replay from the very beginning. We never thought that instant replay was going to get every call right. It's, you want to correct the big miss in the high leverage situation. And I think the challenge system conceptually fits with that sort of approach.
Okay, great. Appreciate that update. Let's talk about pitcher injuries and innings. Over the last 20 plus years, we've seen an increased focus on pitchers maxing out velocity and spin rate. This has seemingly led to a significant increase in injuries. We've also seen a meaningful decline in the number of innings pitched by starting pitchers and a related decline in high profile star pitchers, which have historically been a major showcase for MLB. I know that this is troublesome to you on both fronts. There's been talk of further reducing the number of pitchers on the 26-man roster to 12 from 13 to encourage more innings for starting pitchers, and also a possible implementation of a 6-inning minimum for starting pitchers with some exceptions. What are your thoughts on these two real important issues?
Well, let me take the second one first. I don't think a specific inning requirement, even with exceptions, workable in our rule. It's just, I guess maybe the way to say it, just too blunt an instrument to fix this problem. I do see both problems as really serious. I think the injury issue, our physicians have studied this carefully. They continue to believe that the focus on velocity and spin rate is a significant cause of the increase in injuries. And look, marketing the game, just think about a broadcast, right? The name or the face that you see the most in a broadcast is the starting pitcher. And the matchups of great starting pitchers historically have been important in terms of the marketing game. And I do think we need to get back to that. To me, this needs to be addressed in a more subtle way. I think maybe through rules surrounding transactions. That is, how often can pitchers come on and off the roster? One of the things that happens today, guy pitches 3 days in a row, he gets outrighted, they bring somebody else in to give him some rest as opposed to him staying on the roster the whole time. I think we need to create incentives through things like roster rules, transaction rules for clubs to develop pitchers who go deeper in the game. But it can't, I don't think it can be prescriptive. You have to go 6 innings. I think it has to be a series of rules that create an incentive for the clubs to develop pitchers of a certain type.
Yeah, I interviewed Joe Buck a few months ago, and Joe really felt very strongly that the game of baseball needed star pitchers, and he felt for sure that the best way that Fox could promote their games back when he was there was to, show the pitching
Right.
matchups between the top pitchers, especially in the postseason when they could put
Yep.
those big names up. So,
I agree with John. I
yeah.
really he's right about it.
I get you. Okay. Let's talk labor and player relations, something really important. The MLB Players Association is considered by many to be one of the most powerful unions in the country and the most powerful in all of sports. After a 3 month lockout in early 2022, MLB and the Players Association agreed to a new collective bargaining agreement, which extends through December of 2026. You said that you'll step down at the conclusion of your current contract extension in January of 2029. So you'll negotiate one more CBA for a total of three. I know that one of your goals from the beginning of your term has been to improve player relations. Overall, would you say that the relationship with the Players Association has improved during your tenure? And how would you characterize the current state of the relationship?
Yeah, remember I did 4 as the chief labor negotiator before I became commissioner, so I've
Yeah.
been doing these a long time. Look, I think our relationship with the MLBPA is a solid working relationship. I know people like to focus on, a 3-month lockout in 2022. I mean, the fact of the matter is we didn't miss any games, and that's what really matters at the end of the day. Off-season lockouts are off-season lockouts. I mean, it's sort of the norm in professional sports. I do think that there are a lot of positives going on in the game right now. I think our attendance is very strong. And that's always a great thing for us. It shows that the game's popular. And I think that, the positive things that are going on always motivates the parties to find a solution to the economic issues that face the game, some of which we talked about earlier. I guess overall, I would say this: in the 4 I did as the chief, and the 3 I've had as commissioner, we've never missed a game, and I hope to keep that record intact in my last go round.
Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic. And you know, with everything that's going on right now in terms of valuations of the franchises, the contracts, to somebody looking from the outside, it would seem to me like, wow, it's really important to not have any stoppage. And obviously, you've been very successful. I mean, do you almost feel as the numbers get bigger and bigger that importance grows, or will your next CBA negotiation be no different from the 7 in the past?
Look, I think the issues um, really largely the same. We sell competition. The collective bargaining process is really where the rules within which that competition is going to take place are set. I think that the numbers get bigger. I'm not sure the stakes are higher. Let me say it that way.
Yeah, yeah, I get you. I get you. Listen, incredibly important. Hopefully, we keep it going. You've done a great job with that with Tony Clark. Private equity's become big in sports. Commissioner, you were ahead of the curve in terms of private equity investments in Major League Baseball teams. MLB was the first major U.S. league to welcome private equity investors in 2019. Let me just quickly go over the rules. Private equity firms are allowed to purchase up to 15% in any number of teams. The teams are limited to selling no more than 30% to private equity firms. The investments must be for at least 5 years, and MLB must approve the eventual sale of their team equity interest. Now, these are different types of investments for private equity firms in that they typically see shorter holding periods, gain operating control of the entity, and have more possible outlets to sell investments. Based on your discussions with these firms, beyond the 5 year minimum holding period, what's the mutual understanding as to how long the funds can hold before requiring some level of liquidity? And who are the likely buyers of their stakes in the event that the team is not sold outright?
Yeah, look, I would say this, there is no real understanding beyond the rules as written. We try to be really transparent, particularly with respect to equity transactions. It's important that people understand completely, what the rules of the road are. The PE firms really have not had a problem with the holding period, the lockup period. That's not been an issue with them. I think that there is an active market in these LP interests, both with individuals and other private equity investors. Um, Liquidity in terms of these investments has not been a problem for us. I mean, they do flip, and it's not been an issue. I think the bigger picture issue is this: when you have the kind of escalation in franchise values that you've seen in professional sports, putting the capital stack together with individuals becomes more and more difficult, and private equity that is willing to make a essentially passive investment in order to get access to an asset class that not previously available to them. That's the trade that's being made here.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Something that's somewhat interesting. Let's take like an Arctos Partners that has investments in several MLB teams. Just curious, they're looking to, I guess, invest billions of dollars in franchises. They obviously need a certain level of information to make those decisions. I'm just curious as to how much of a look they get at the operations of these teams, because obviously we've got proprietary information. It's competitive as can be. I mean, are the Red Sox comfortable? That the Cubs may eventually get information as to how they're operating things. How does this whole flow of information, or are there just limits?
There are very significant limits on the flow of information. The best way to kind of characterize um, the rules is that they get enough financial information to understand the long-term value of the asset. They do not get enough financial information to know, for example, what somebody's plans are on the baseball operations side.
I get it. Okay. Okay. Commissioner, this next one has been a big win for baseball. I think we'd all agree on that. MLB has been very successful in shortening game times, courtesy of the pitch clock, limitations on pickoff attempts, limitations on mound visits, and the extra innings ghost runner. Average game lengths have declined by about 34 minutes since 2021 to about 2 hours and 36 minutes. Enough accomplished at this point, or would you like to see even more improvement?
The way I think about that question is kind of the approach we took to the issue from the beginning. We listened to our fans and we made changes that we thought were consonant with what our fans were looking for. Right now, I'm pretty satisfied with the game time issue. I think the biggest reason for that is since the clock went in, we had really significant increases in attendance, 10% a year ago, and followed that with another increase of a couple percent last year. We got back above 70 million fans for the first time in almost a decade. In particular of interest is our weekday attendance, even before kids get out of school, which has kind of always been a dividing line for us, has gone up significantly. What that's telling me is those shorter game times makes it more attractive for fans to come to the ballpark. As long as we're seeing those trends, I'm perfectly satisfied. But we're going to watch them and continue to talk to our fans, and we'll make decisions based on that data.
Okay, yeah. I mean, of all the changes you made, to me, maybe the biggest change was the ghost runner. I mean, given the improvements that you've seen, are there any potential changes to the ghost runner rule, or you think that's here to stay as is?
I think it's here to stay. I think it's something that it's popular with players in the sense that a more definitive idea about when a game's going to be over. I think it's important in terms of player safety and health. 18 inning games with guys playing out of position and whatnot. Those are not good things for players, particularly when you have to play every day. And I think it's good for fans, it gives the fans the focus for when, the most exciting part of a game is going to happen. And I think for those reasons, it's going to stay around.
Got it. Got it. Now, listen, it's been great to see the times come down. Let's talk about team expansion. You said recently that you'd like to have a final decision in place by the time that you retire from MLB in January of 2029. It's my understanding that your near-term priority is to have stadium issues settled for the A's and the Rays before moving forward on expansion. These are fluid situations, and I'm not going to ask you to comment on them today, but can you provide an update on league expansion and tell us what are the most important factors considered by MLB when selecting the next franchise locations?
Yeah. Look, the I'd say two things about expansion conceptually. We think we're a growth business. There are markets around the U.S. that want Major League Baseball. That's our principal motivation. There are also advantages in going from 30 to 32 in terms of schedule and format. It would create an opportunity to realign, just without boring you to tears. Fours work a lot better in schedules than fives. Okay. It's just, it just works a lot better in terms of how the scheduling can be done. In terms of factors, look, obviously we're huge on the idea of strong local ownership. So there's got to be a strong local group, not too big a group, a single individual that, is going to be the anchor or control person. Obviously, public support in terms of either renovating or building an adequate facility, very, very important. And, geographics are important. For the schedule format issues I talked about, I think it's pretty clear that we need a team in the Eastern time zone and one in the Western or Mountain time zone to make our formats work.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I spoke a few weeks ago with Eric Woolworth, who's the president of business operations for the Miami Heat, and he pushed back on the widely held belief that the NBA would expand by two teams in the near future. His feel is that some team owners were not in favor of dividing up the revenues amongst two more teams, despite the near-term windfall they'd see from the new franchises. Is that a concern for you at all, or are MLB owners mostly
Yeah, I mean, look,
comfortable?
that's always the analysis that underlies the business decision of whether to expand. You get money up front, but your central revenue gets divided, by two more teams. In our case, 32 as opposed to 30. The NBA has a little different calculus. They have a larger percentage of their revenue is generated centrally than is the case in Major League Baseball. So obviously, sharing that central stream more important. And that central stream in the NBA is about to get a lot bigger due to the really lucrative TV contract that the NBA just struck.
Yeah, yeah, I get you. I'm going to ask you this next one. I know we both love the game of golf. MLB and the PGA Tour are very different entities. We have independent contractors in golf, while MLB players are team employees. We have about 125 tour players and about 780 MLB players. I'm wondering, though, if the aggressive moves taken by the Saudi Public Investment Fund and Live Golf over the last couple of years created any apprehension for MLB and team owners.
Look, we have rules about, and we pay pretty careful attention to, what sort of entities can own our teams. The tour is a very different target because you're essentially buying into one entity, whereas, we're franchised, right? Very different setup. But the second thing that's of concern, baseball attracts kind of unique scrutiny because it's America's pastime. And I think whatever, reluctance, hesitation you've seen with respect to the Saudis taking over golf would probably be, if anything, greater in baseball just because it's the national pastime.
Yeah, yeah, I get you. No, I understand that. Let me hit you with one more question. What are your thoughts on salary deferrals like we've seen with the Dodgers over the last few years on about $1 billion of player contracts, most of that coming with the Shohei Ohtani contract last year? And I'm sure that a fair amount of people expected that we were going to see deferred terms embedded in the Soto contract, which ultimately was not the case. I know that this is all in line with the current CBA terms, but do you see any need to possibly address this in the near term?
Yeah, deferrals, but deferrals are at some point can become problematic. Historically, we did have one franchise, Arizona, that got itself into financial difficulties as a result of excessive deferrals. We've strengthened our rules in terms of the funding of deferred compensation in order to avoid that kind of problem. But look, obviously, the bigger the numbers get, the bigger the concern.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, your new rules require that money has to be placed in escrow each year as they kind of build out towards that deferral, right?
Right. That's accurate, and that assures that the money's going to be there for the player to get paid. It doesn't solve all of the ownership side issues in terms of you go to sell the club, you're selling a club with a big mortgage on its future.
Yeah, I get you. I get you. Commissioner Manfred, let me extend my congratulations to you and your team on all the great success in Major League Baseball today. Thank you so much for joining us today on Questions for Cancer Research.
All right, thanks. I enjoyed it.